Redbird Reboot podcast. Are you ready to get rebooted, Cardinals fans? He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Redbird Reboot.
Good afternoon, Arizona Cardinals fans. Happy Monday. Welcome into the Redbird Reboot podcast, where you got your complete Cardinals coverage. We got me and Marcos here at Pancake Soul. Make sure you're following on X, as well as our YouTube channel that we've got over there. If you're on your phone, you can always scan that QR code in the corner or take a screenshot for later. And we've got another Cardinals podcaster with the takes that are either going to make you or break you. We've got Clancy's Corner, Alex Clancy here. Clancy, welcome on in. Glad to have you as part of the podcast as we kind of wrap up the 2025 offseason.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about the Cardinals after the draft and free agency for, 3 years in a row now? I think that's some sort of record.
Yeah, it's just crazy, at least, to look at the fact that we see where this team had come from for the end of the 2022 season and essentially where they're starting out now in terms of where it feels like that the rebuild that we've talked about, this whole rebooting the Cardinals from ground zero, that's pretty much at this point done when you take a look at where they've established their depth chart, what they've been able to have. They've made a lot of acquisitions this offseason compared to the last couple of years. I do want to kind of bring it back at least just to a little bit ago to see where the Cardinals were and then looking at how their team has just completely transformed. This is a look at the depth chart in the 2022 Cardinals at the end of the year, where they moved on from DeAndre Hopkins. You're talking about the Robbie Anderson acquisition. AJ Green has since retired. Rondale Moore is now a Viking. As far as it comes to with their tackles, the one guy who's still sticking around is Kelvin Beachum. Trey McBride had just been through a rookie year in that season. On the defensive side of the ball, you're basically talking about Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson. There is no one else who is left basically on the defensive side of the ball. Shout out to, unfortunately, Victor Dimukeje getting injured with the Giants, one of the guys who actually did manage to kind of latch on as a day 3 pick. That was the Arizona Cardinals then, and then taking a look at the Arizona Cardinals now, this is a team that has depth on the defensive side, team that actually has added a ton of bodies this offseason. Alex, this has got to be the first offseason we can say for a while that not only does it feel like the Cardinals are going for it, it feels like they've actually made moves that can back that up in terms of being able to lead to a payoff and likely, hopefully, playoff potential for this team.
Yeah, and they didn't have to – there weren't any home run swings at all during this rebuild. It wasn't like you gave Christian Wilkins $170 million last offseason. Like, there were no real – like, all of these contracts were very team-friendly. I mean, Josh Sweat, very team-friendly. Calais, obviously. Dalvin, obviously. Trey McBride getting only $40 million guaranteed over 4 years. Like, this is what methodical and systematic and, stable rebuild looks like over 3 years. I know people wanted it to be last year. It was never set to be last year. The money didn't line up. Everybody, this is what everybody hoped in a vacuum it would look like after 3 cycles of free agency and draft. And I mean, I don't know if you could. When was the last time they had a roster this deep? Like, genuinely, we're gonna have to talk about. Are they going to have defensive line? Are they going to have to cut guys in the cornerback room? That's a fantastic problem to have.
Yeah, no, 2022, even when you talk about how that team was supposed to be the stacked team, team was basically an inch deep. That was basically how deep the team was.
Top heavy.
Yeah, very top heavy. It was essentially up to Zach Allen and J.J. Watt. It was up to DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown. And it was Kyler Murray. And when their offensive line saw struggles, we really got to see just how paper thin it was. Now, you take a look at where the current roster stands. If a James Conner goes down, you've got a third-round pick who's ready to go. If you have a tackle who goes down, for the most part, you still have Kelvin Beachum that's going to be able to slide in. You're able to also say Christian Jones, another draft pick that you've been able to have. Trey McBride, he's a star. Like, that's one of the things you can say about him, is that he's basically one of those star players. They still have guys in an Elijah Higgins and a Tip Ryman who are available behind him. And of course, the first time in a number of years, they go out and bring in an actual veteran backup quarterback in Jacoby Brissett. No shade to Clayton Tune, but we were able to see, at least in terms of the Browns game, that being better than Desmond Ridder is really good when it talks about just being able to stick on an NFL roster, but there's a massive difference between being able to go out there and be trusted to actually start games. We saw the Cardinals go out and make some changes. The defense, I think, is honestly the story here, Alex, because we've seen multiple years now where the Cardinals have had to essentially trust the offensive side of the ball, get some guys around Kyler, get some help for Trey McBride, bring in a Paris Johnson Jr. to kind of be that offensive leader to replace DJ Humphries. The defense is where they made almost all of the investments this offseason, from even re-signing Budda Baker to adding two incredibly impactful, we'd assume, players in the NFL draft, and then adding in a few other veterans and paying some pretty decent money for the likes of Josh Sweat and even Calais Campbell and Dalvin Tomlinson. Those were not just simple one-year deal, a couple $1 million, or veteran minimum signing type of guys. Those are guys that they're expecting to have a starting role on this Cardinals defense.
Yeah, and you look at where the rookies were drafted. Like, I mean, I always go back on my show to talk, the Marco Wilson years where he was drafted to like save a position group. He had no business starting as CB2 his rookie year. And you see guys like Walter Nolan and Will Johnson and even Jordan Burch, like, they're not drafted to save a position group. They're good enough to, if that were to be the case. We said it about Marv last year. He wasn't drafted to save the offense. So it's like, it's such a great spot for these young, potentially, super elite players to be a part of, because they can just go in and learn at an organic level that a rookie's allowed to learn at, with the opportunity to absolutely pop off on a wizard like Nick Rallis and Jonathan Gannon defense. I mean, this defense is deeper than, if you tell me they're a top 5 defense, I'm like, okay, yeah, that actually makes sense, which is bonkers. It's absolutely, even with the off-ball linebacker spot kind of being a question mark at this point. The secondary and the pass rush, they were a top 15 defense without a pass rush last year.
Yeah.
And they've just loaded up. Like, I'm so excited to see what Nick Rallis is going to do with them.
Yeah, I will say, just bouncing off of that with the scheme and what's going on with this defense and whatnot. The question before was, is it the coach? I mean, is it the defensive coordinator? Is it the scheme? Or is it the players? That was always something that was in contention with everybody. Regardless of what way you saw it, you knew that you had somewhere about like at the best, like a outside of the top 10 defense. And at the worst, it was like a, bottom of the barrel type of defense and whatnot. People are coming to see that Nick Rallis is bringing up a group that, even if the talent's not there, it's playing better than what they're supposed to be at. And so now that he has weapons, and now that we're loading up that side of the ball, like, it's going to be interesting and fascinating to see how high they can make it as far as a defensive unit.
I agree. I mean, that's really well put. It's something that there's not. So, like, say, I don't know. I mean, we completely forget about Bijou Ojulari and Darius Robinson too. Like, they're not even talking points because they're so kind of TBD. Starling Thomas, I apologize once a week for not giving him more of his flowers over the last year. He was one of the I think he was a top 20 run defender percentage-wise from Pro Football Focus from the cornerback position. Like, they don't have a true weakness that can be exposed to the point of being a crutch or to, being something that could crater this defense. I mean, Mac Wilson played great last year. Once they drew up the exotic blitzes with him and Budda Baker, like, I don't see a weakness on this defense, which, I mean, when was the last time they had 2 corners? 2014, Patrick Peterson, Antonio Cromartie. That was over a decade ago, man. Like, I'm just shocked that it's working. Like, aren't you guys kind of pinching yourself? Like, wait, this isn't supposed to be how it happens. Like, there's supposed to be some sort of explosion that ruins the whole trajectory of things. It just hasn't happened since the end of 2022, which is wild.
Right. It's like, you're going to say, like, even entering the 2022 season, it's like everything that could go wrong went wrong, but you also feel like it was a spot of things have just been stretched out for way too long, because you're talking about the issues in 2018. The team decided to not hit the reset button, kind of do a soft reset. Hey, we're going to keep one of Steve guys on defense. We'll bring in a new offensive mind, a new quarterback. 2023, you finally were like, we're going to have someone from the outside bring in an entirely new scouting system. Cardinals, Michael Bidwell in interviews had said they had kept the same scouting system in place since like the 70s. So you're talking about like using, okay, like Dennis Green was the guy who was able to use that system probably to the closest thing we've seen in perfection. But even he couldn't get the Cardinals to the playoffs, and they couldn't have that sustained success, which I think is a core tenet that we've seen of Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon have preached. They've talked a lot about, we're not looking just to try to win now, get that next contract, and then have things end like it did with Bruce Arians walking away and then winning a Super Bowl elsewhere, or with the regime that they had just seen in Arizona, where you're talking about having to kind of just take your lumps, take your medicine, because you had your quarterback running for his life, having nothing else to do with any other plays going on, tears his ACL, has to then come back in the following year. And you're just, hey, we're waiting for Marvin Harrison Jr. to get here at the end of the season. There's some teams and franchises like the Cleveland Browns or others who've been in that kind of perpetual pattern for long periods of time, and they've stayed there. And we've seen that the Cardinals, to their credit, have been able to at least get out of that pattern. What we haven't seen so far, I think, has been being able to use that and get out of that pattern with the same quarterback. That's something at least that we've seen with Kyler Murray coming in. The team at least has had a lot of, I would say at least stability since he's come in. They've not really, with him starting, had less than a 500 record outside of, and I would even argue if you take a look at where the team standpoint was in 2022, they're probably going to finish at a bottom of about 6 wins or so.
Sure.
He goes out, they all of a sudden lose Colt McCoy to injury. They just tank the entire rest of the season going downhill, bringing guys off of the street to be able to have to start games. This is where we've been able to see at least a lot of the Cardinals' biggest issues has seemingly been mistakes made in the NFL draft, which compounded over years. We're starting, I think, Alex, to see a reverse compounding that could happen potentially this year. We've seen it with a Trey McBride already. We've seen it at least in terms of a Paris Johnson and a Garrett Williams. The question is now, are we going to be able to see this with some of the other rookies moving forward? Because like we're saying, that is probably the biggest defining thing for the Cardinals this season is, can you have success early and late in the season, and do those young players, particularly your 2024 and 2025 draft picks, step up in a major way?
Yeah, it'll be fascinating. I mean, Marv is going to be under a microscope naturally. I don't know. I wasn't surprised like many others were, that his numbers weren't going to be super gaudy like Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors, both of whom were drafted to save the pass game in their respective spots. Like Marv was going to be the third option. It was Trey McBride and it was James Conner. I don't know why there was any sort of real surprise there, unless he just ripped it from Trey McBride's hands, which is a great problem to have. But you're right. Like Paris Johnson Jr. is going to be your dude on the left side, and Garrett Williams is going to be your guy in the slot, and you're going to have Trey McBride be your 1A or be your 1 or 1A. Like, this is the culmination of 3 compound interests, as you mentioned, of off seasons. But this is the first time where it goes from 0 real expectations to the most expectations we've seen since the beginning of the 2015 season. Like, immediately. So we're going to find out. It's going to be Kyler Murray or it won't be next year. Like, I don't think there's really any sort of, the Band-Aids ripped off. This is what we've been waiting for. There's no contingency plans. There's no buts, nothing. This is the strongest GM down to 53 on the roster that the Cardinals have had since 2015 by a long shot. And I know a lot of it's future pacing. I know it's a lot of it's young guys, but all of the young guys have a vet buddy system that's going to allow them to move along and progress a lot more quickly than if they were out on an island by themselves. I mean, that's fair to say, right? Like the insulation with this roster is as strong and as ironclad, at least on paper, that we've seen it so long.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all that, with the roster being the strongest that it's ever been since the 2015 season. And we're kind of building in a way where we're kind of seeing what's going on with the Eagles defense when they had all these top-notch guys, but they were like getting up there in age and whatnot. They still have Darius Slay, of course, but they have all these other players. You had Hassan Riddick, you had Brandon Graham, you had obviously you had Sweat on that team, but you had Bradbury. So you had these people that were kind of getting up in age, and then they went to the Super Bowl, they lost the Super Bowl, and all those players left, the defensive coordinator left, the offensive coordinator left, and you're kind of seeing as like, what was next? What's coming to us? And because they had continuously kept drafting high players that they wanted to develop, getting people who are culture guys, they went ahead and took a shot at a player that had bad character or some bad character flaws, and he went to the perfect scenario. And now you have this defense that won a Super Bowl, and they lost a couple pieces, but it doesn't seem like people are counting them out for the incoming future. And I see that happening with the Cardinals, like as of last year up to this year, where they drafted high were for a defensive tackle in back-to-back years. They got a guy who had no business being where they're at, in a cornerback in Will Johnson. And then you just got yourself a defensive end or an edge rusher just because you're in the third round. You're like, heck, this guy has great athleticism. Let's take a shot at him. Keep filling up that group.
Yeah, no, I think, and I would go, and this is difficult because we've seen it from Philly. We haven't seen it from the Cardinals. Like, the long-term trajectory is even better for where the Cardinals are at because they drafted the majority of their impact guys, or what they think their impact guys are going to be. Like, the Eagles piecemealed it together and then just had Jalen Carter drop in their lap. I think, what did they leapfrog Chicago to draft him 9? And then they had the next year's draft
with Chicago, actually. Yeah, Chicago's like, oh no, we can't take that guy out of here. He goes to Philly, he becomes a legend. He goes to Chicago at least, and they're tossing about just some organizations at least have a hard time being able to find stability. Sometimes stability finds those organizations, and it takes a little bit of time for owners to have to get the right people in there to get things to be able to catch up. And we'll see if we see that with Chicago and with Ben Johnson this year. They kept their GM and the people in place who kind of got them that number 1 pick and passed in Jalen Carter. It does feel like Arizona, at least from what we've seen with Jonathan Gannon, and you even talked about it, Alex, like this is a top 11 offense last year. That was top 7, I think, in running the ball. The passing offense is where we're expecting strides to be made this year. We're still expecting them to be a dominant run-heavy team, but defensively, they were top half in pretty much every metric. And like you said, they're trotting out like undrafted guys who were not even intended to be the starters at the nose tackle and defensive line. And they're having to figure out what they were doing, at least with Kaiser White having to shift his role because he wasn't, Marcus and I went through the tape, he wasn't covering the same way as last year. So Nick Rallis used him as that guy to be able to blitz off of the edge. He used Buda Baker then as being kind of that consistent tackler for the most part. And you got Mac Wilson as like an edge rusher. They really were kind of having to basically take chicken bleep and be able to make chicken salad out of it. And you know what? It was a mid chicken salad, but it was way better than any right it had to be. And I think that's where a lot of people are now excited looking at, all right, so now you give Nick Rallis, a Dalvin Tomlinson and Calais Campbell up front, and then you give a Walter Nolan who can rotate in. They've always loved guys who can have a rotating defensive line. It wasn't just Jalen Carter. It was also looking at the guys like a Milton Williams who just signed a huge deal, getting a guy a year earlier at least who was like the Superman of like 350 pounders for the most part. And those were the two things that they did, was saying, hey, we're going to identify strong defensive line up front, bring in some young cornerbacks on the back end. We got to see exactly how that pick 6 of Patrick Mahomes went down in the Super Bowl that basically put it away for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, with Cooper DeJean. Yeah. No, it'll be because look at what the secondary did without a pass rush last year, as you mentioned. It's like that wasn't supposed to happen. That defense was not supposed to play the way they did. And it wasn't perfect. And yeah, they got lit up a handful of times. The Cardinals were a top 11 offense, and they looked like crap for a large chunk of multiple games. They look like either a top 5 offense or a bottom 5 offense. And I don't like, that's the thing. That's going to be the big thing. And I think that's the reason why they went heavy defense, aside from drafting Hayden Conner. Like, that offense doesn't need any help, man. Like, I'm not in the camp that they need to bring in Amari Cooper or trade for George Pickens or any of that stuff. Just utilize the talent you have and don't just throw the ball to Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. all the time. Like, unfold it. And you alluded to it. Like, I'm not sure if you guys agree or not, but like, say it's 60-40 run pass. Just say to keep it clean. I'd love to see 55-45 this year. I want to see the ball in the best players' hands more this year. I think Kyler Murray gets cold. Like, I think he's a sharpshooter. He needs to get the juices flowing early. And I think that's something that they just don't do. They just lean on James Conner early in games. And I think it's It's a rhythm thing for Kyler. And, good, bad, indifferent. The dude is special with the ball in his hands a lot more than bad quarterbacks are. So I would just love to see that iteration of this offense be less Stone Age and be just a little bit more West Coasty, just like a peppering in of, and not just, the run first offense play action that we saw last year.
Yeah, no, like we even saw last year when the Cardinals were able to start off quick on offense with Kyler's legs against the Niners, not even talking big plays, but having that threat that was available. Yeah. It was able to open up things, at least in a lot of the passing game. And then late in that game, what we saw was Cardinals defense just really was kind of run out of the building by just the talent that the Niners had. What they were able to do was kind of take advantage of Kyle Shanahan going, hey, I'm just going to throw the ball instead of being able to use a run-heavy script to be able to control the ball, control clock. They took advantage of that, got those key stops, forced a turnover or two, and then we're able to see Kyler dial up Marv for that one conversion that the team needed to be able to get that close win. And it's like that kind of catapulted from there into some of the blowout wins against the Jets, blowout win at least they had against the Bears, a comeback on the road against the Dolphins. We've seen a lot of this in 2024, and really the question then at least is, all right, this is a team that we said last year had a chance to be able to go up for the division, and they just were not able to get past it at the end of the season. The Rams were just too strong in some of the games. The Seahawks defense got to them, but were not able to come through. So then I think the question is, what's holding them back at this point? They've made some of those additions. What is the thing that's holding Arizona back? Not saying of what would hold them back necessarily, but is there anything that really is holding them back from being able to kind of crown or anoint this team like how Cardinals fans have been wanting to ever since this rebuild began?
It's the 3 and outs on offense. It's the anemia of the offense from time to time. That's really indescribable after they look so good for so long. Like, why wait till the fourth quarter to turn it on? Why? Like, it's a lot of Marvin Kyler too. Like, this is going to be the element of Marvin 2025. Now there are expectations. It's a perfect rookie year, almost 900 yards, 8 touchdowns. Everybody can just relax with Brian Thomas Jr. League Neighbors comparison. Just relax. There's no correlative between the two at all. And I think, but like really this comes down to Kyler Murray needing to be more special than he has been. And it's not the ceiling, it's the floor. I want to see more of a Baker Mayfield floor than what Kyler Murray has. Baker Mayfield is one of the best average quarterbacks in the NFL, slightly above average. He blew the roof off last year, won people a bunch of fantasy championships. I want to see that floor where it's not just 13 for 18 for 125, a touchdown and an interception. And I think that goes along with getting him more involved early. As you mentioned, to your point, keeping opposing defenses on their heels, just a reminder that he can rip a 50-yarder on any given play. Just to keep it, he doesn't have to run 7 or 8 times a game, but I think that's it. It's the offense. The offense needs to be more streamlined throughout a game and not just a bottom 5 looking offense from time to time.
Yeah, Kyler came up about, I think, 150 or so yards short of a 4,000-yard passing offensive season, had 20 touchdowns to 11 picks. It was his best season since that 2021 season in which he played the whole season that year. I think he missed actually a few games, unless I'm mistaken.
He missed 3 that year, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
That year.
And he still ended up with so he's never hit that 4,000-yard passing mark, but you could also look and say, all right, like this is kind of like saying the Cardinals had never beaten the Seahawks with Geno Smith. Well, they kind of had. It's just they missed a field goal at the very end from Matt Prater that kind of cost them the game. So technically it's like, yeah, you're right.
Got the Marv.
Did enough. Yeah, got the Marv.
Yeah,
They probably would have fallen back below the likes of Alt or Malik Neighbors had they won that game, which is kind of interesting to see. Of like, oh yeah, like that late season loss may have been the difference between a J.C. Latham and a Marvin Harrison Jr. All right, that's how the draft can be sometimes. It's cruel and unforgiving. But with some of the drops that we were able to see from each of those areas, I think is one of the spots of we have our expectations for what the Cardinals should be. We're expecting and saying that they should be improved. We're saying there's a new offensive line coach that they do have with them now. And it's going to be interesting to see how these younger players develop because, like you said, they brought back everyone from last year. It's still Evan Brown. It's still Froholt. It's still going to be maybe a whole season we get from Jonah Williams, or if not, then we'll see if Kelvin Beacham's got one last good year in the tank like we saw last year. It is going to be on Kyler Murray to have to step up, and I think this is where a lot of people look at that and say, well, that's not good enough. A lot of people then look at that and then say, well, that is where the limiter is. And I think as Cardinals fans, we've seen that there's a lot more limiters than just the quarterback over the years. We've seen issues that have popped up everywhere from ownership had a couple of different scandals. Also, we've seen a couple of like awards that ownership has gotten this past year with Michael Bidwell. We've seen times where the scouting department and general managers wanted players and they happened to get better players with their backup plan. It just was one of those things that we've seen process limiters that we've had so far. This is the first time where I think we can ask the question, do we have enough in place to say that Kyler Murray is a limiter or not? And if that is what we see at the end of the season, that's where I think a lot of people have been doubting Arizona is because of number one. And like you said, it probably all does cement now that the defense has the opportunity to be good. It really does kind of come down to making sure that, like, don't screw this up, kid. Like, this is all the stuff that's set up for you to kind of get out of that quarterback purgatory category. Now it's kind of on him to be able to do it.
Yeah. I wanted to add to what Alex Clancy said earlier when it came to like the offense and whatnot. And I agree that like they should be a better split 45-55. I think before they weren't allowed to have that crazy, explosive, consistent offense. It wasn't because they're not capable of being able to do that. Look at the players they have on the field. I think it was more so because the defense was not up to par. So a lot of offenses usually do this whole like dictate with running the ball control type of offenses. If their defense is not good enough to be able to get out, like, get a 3 and out and then give the ball back to the offense. If they're the type of offense, defense is a bend but don't break, give up a lot of like, time, giving up points and whatnot, you're trying to limit the amount of time that defense is on the field. And so with the ball control offense that you're orchestrating on offense, where you're just running the ball, chewing up clock and whatnot, you limit the amount of time that your defense is on the field, and you're kind of wearing down the opposing team's defense. This year, it shouldn't be the question that the defense wouldn't be able to have like spectacular plays where they intercept the ball, where they cause a fumble, or they can get off the field on 3 and out. So on offense, you kind of want to up the tempo because that your defense can hold and you can get up, get one of those leads early in the game and do what you used to do back in 2015, 2014, sometimes even 2013, where you got up so high that you're just pinning your ears back. It's down to your defensive line just trying to get as many sacks as they can or force as many interceptions as much as they can to be able to dominate games in that sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. What was the phrase I used going into the season? Because we thought the defense was going to be less than stellar. I said the best defense the Cardinals have is their run game. So I agree with you that had to be infused into Drew Petzing's thought process with running the ball. I completely agree. When it comes to Kyler Murray, like I got a kind of a simple question. And does your quarterback have to be your best player and your leader bona fide, or can he just be part of a cog that works? Like Jalen Hurts is not the best player on the Eagles. What Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback for the Eagles roster. He does the best thing that he does what they need the best. They've got a great defense. They've got a great offensive line. He's a compliment in the run game. He takes shots down the field when he needs to. But Jalen Hurts in a vacuum isn't the most talented quarterback in the NFL. Like, he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not a talent like Justin Herbert just throwing the football. He's not. So does Kyler Murray need to be that? Or can you rely on your defense, rely on your run game, and have Kyler Murray be, which is what I equate the best types of quarterbacks are, elite game managers who are special when your team needs them to be. They don't need to be flashy every play. Tom Brady did the little things right, and he was special every time the Patriots needed him to be. So can Kyler Murray do that? In the fourth quarter, down 10, 6 minutes left, where you need a score, a stop, and a score to win a game that matters. That's really what it comes down to for me with him. Like, I know he's so polarizing, man, and I know that, like, the troubling part is we've seen the top of the mountain with him.
Yeah.
We've seen what greatness looks like for, like, long stretches at a time, and then it completely goes away. So, and I know that that's not new. I feel like with this, this is a year where he truly could win the MVP. Like, I've never really said that before, but I think if he plays 80% of what we think he's capable of for 15 of 17 weeks and they win 11 or 12 games, I think he could win MVP. I don't think that's crazy. We've seen the caliber.
Get a vote. Just get like we said, we've seen the caliber, play well enough at least, and then finish strong to be able to even earn an MVP vote, even just one, because the competition is just so stacked. Like last year, Lamar Jackson rushed for almost 1,000 yards, threw for 4,000, and he didn't even win MVP. Like this is one of those crazy eras of modern NFL football where, like we've said, if you can have a top 7 to 8 quarterback in the National Football League, you're golden as a franchise. And people will not care because it's going to be like we had a rematch of the Eagles and Chiefs from a couple of years ago because that was the best team in the NFC. They ended up getting back there after a down year and were able to put away the Chiefs. It was 3 and out, interception for a pick 6. The defense really is what won the Eagles that Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts was able to get them up 10-0 originally with being able to
made a couple great throws.
Yeah,
a couple great
protected the ball.
Passes.
Put them away in the very end with that kind of, all right, we're going to dial this up. Just Chiefs are done. If we get this play, hit it to Devontae Smith over the top, they're done. Hits it. Just you can't have one of those types of clutch genes that you're able to see. And we've, like we said, seen all of that from the likes of Kyler. So the question is, now that the roster is caught up, now it's like, oh yeah, well, let's go out and see it. So then this leads though to the opposite of what national media is saying, which a lot of cases are, this is like the 4th worst team in the NFC. They're picking the Cardinals to finish 4th in the division. Like you've got Sam Darnold coming into the division and a Niners team that's gotten rid of more guys than it's added. They drafted nothing but run stoppers. There's not really any more additional help for Brock Purdy with an aging Trent Williams over there. There's a lot of questions that you can say after this last offseason about the other teams in the Cardinals division. And we take a look at their schedule. The home teams this year, oh my goodness, like they actually have a good chance to be able to do super well at home, getting the NFC South and the AFC South this year. You're going to basically see some help probably come with Jacksonville, at least for the most part, as far as for those who are Cardinals haters with if Trevor Lawrence can bounce back a bit. But like, there's not anything that really has been proven from the Panthers or the Falcons thus far. The Titans have a rookie quarterback they're trotting out there. And the Jaguars, Travis Hunter, they gave up a ton of picks to get him. He's going to be an awesome threat next to Brian Thomas Jr. But you're also looking at a defense that's completely having to get retooled. And your best player is going to be on the defensive side, probably an offensive player, if we're going to be honest, at least with the Jaguars, notwithstanding Josh Allen on the other side of the field. This is a spot where I think really what it's going to be interesting to see is that the Cardinals at home have a chance to really do some good work overall if they can just get 3-3 in the division. The road is where this is where I think the narrative could really shape up for Arizona, because you're going to see some very winnable games and you're going to see some tough opponents. The Buccaneers are there on the road. The Cincinnati Bengals are there on the road. Even the Dallas Cowboys, with just getting that trade acquisition, we all know what Kyler Murray's done on the road in Dallas. That's going to be an intriguing sort of game. And I know you've got some takes on where you think that game and when it should be played, Alex.
Yeah, because I agree with everything you said. And obviously the schedule looks wildly different than what it's going to look like when they actually play in week 4, week 5, week 6. Everything changes. But yeah, this is the year the Cardinals play on Thanksgiving in Dallas. Like, doesn't it make sense? It's like Kyler Murray coming home. It's a good product. There's going to be storylines. The Cowboys think it's going to be a win for them. And I know that they've shifted more of a division model, but that wasn't always what it was. They had Buffalo in Josh Allen's second year. I remember Buffalo just ran roughshod all over him. Cole Beasley had his redemption game against the Cowboys, and I think he scored the game-winning touchdown. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But I think this is the year. And I apologize to all of my friends in sports media who would have to travel to Dallas on Thanksgiving. I'm not talking it into existence, but wouldn't that be this is the year? It'll probably be Washington. It'll probably be something sexier in the NFC East, but I would love it. I think it's a great test. This is a perfect time for a great test for the Cardinals on the road under all the spotlights on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, absolutely. He's undefeated so far in that stadium, and every single time he goes over there to play the Cowboys, he just shows out because that's where his roots are kind of from and whatnot. That's what he went over there to do his off-season training is in Texas, so he has kind of a Texas pride type of from sure. People that are born in Texas and whatnot. Obviously, he's still a Cardinal, but he goes there, he plays special, and it seems like he I don't know, that stadium just gives him a boost or something.
Yeah, man. I want to see, I don't know, what do you guys think? Normally I'm against, I don't care if they're prime time or not. It'd be fun to see a Sunday night football game against Cincinnati or something, the the initial iteration of the calendar, not when the schedule, not when, the flexing starts. But like, I want to see the book thrown at this team this year. Like, I want to see in the continental U.S. Like, if they don't have to travel overseas, like that's one thing I wouldn't like them to do, but do it all. I don't care. Give me all of the spotlight. I want to see what it's like. I mean, they won Monday Night Football last year against the Chargers. Like, I want to see it all. I want to see what this team's made of. I think Jonathan Gannon and Nick Roush-Petzing will have these guys ready to rock. Like, I'm not worried about that anymore. The stability was there. We saw it week 1 in 2023 against Washington, where they almost won that game with Josh Dobbs being with the team for less than 2 weeks. Like, it's been there since day one. So I would just love to see it. Do you guys want, do you want to see as many primetime games as possible?
Yeah, I think that's the question I think we would have is how many primetime games is this team going to get? Like, one thing I think that I would love to see is week 1 Cardinals-Niners. I'd love to see that because the last time we saw that, and I think it was to start the 2000 and I want to say 20 season, at least with everything on the road, Kyler ran for like 150 yards. They knocked off the I think it was like that one late pass that was out of bounds, at least for the most part, from Garoppolo.
Murphy.
Yeah, nobody had picked the Cardinals to be able to win that game. DeAndre Hopkins goes off. Kyler went off. Right. It was just one of those things where, like, the guard is changing. And we saw last year the Cardinals ran this backup Niners team out of the building for the most part, just running the ball consistently enough where they just drafted nothing but run stoppers. I'd love to be able to have all these people who are thinking, oh, the Niners are going to pounce back this year. This team is too good. Would love to just see that, boom, week 1, just establish that this is the same Cardinals team that ran them out of the building last year. As well as I think another one that's going to be interesting to me, like you said, just looking at these things, is there's a revenge game that's on there that I think the Cardinals need to bounce back in, and that'd be the Green Bay Packers. That's been one of those things where they used to be the Packers slayers back when they had the Aaron Rodgers, that when they had the Brett Favre's.
Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, even with Chase Edmonds game, I was even thinking of that one. It was really just kind of that whole thing shifted once you had the AJ Green game they're supposed to win, didn't get that with the turnaround for everything. Since then, it's just the Packers have had their number, and it's something where this is a home game. There's going to be tons of Packers in the stadium because that's just how the Midwest is going to travel. They don't want to live in the Midwest because it's cold, so they'll move out to the desert and then go see a Packers game. Being able to at least come out strong and get a win against this Packers team, I think, is something that this Cardinals team, like, maybe I'm wrong at least that they're able to lose that game and get around, but I think that's one of those demons that you're going to have to slay if you're going to achieve what you want to achieve this season. That's going to be up there. And then, of course, we're going to also, I think, see the one game that I would love to be able to see as far as, like you said, a national game or anything like that for the most part, would probably be a rematch with the Houston Texans, because this is after that trade years later. Everyone's like, who won the trade? What happened with each of these things? The Texans are entering this season as like a got to go for it. The Cardinals are entering the season, got to go for it. This is kind of is it better to be aggressive and go out and say, we're going to get the quarterback and we're going to get Will Anderson, give up all these draft picks? Or is this kind of one of those slow and steady tortoise beats the hare sort of race wins we've seen? Cardinals were able to essentially lose that first game, I think it was, to the Texans to be able to keep their tank in order. But it really was with multiple interceptions of C.J. Stroud that they were able to do it. That would be one of the other games I'd love to see highlighted because we don't really know what the Texans are going to look like fully this year. They've added 2 receivers. They got rid of their left tackle. That offensive line's kind of going to be questionable against this defensive line. That would be another game I'd like to highlight on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, those are 2 Monday Night Football game nominees. They both could be.
That Packers game, that Packers game is going to be welcoming Isaiah Simmons back into the fray. So it's going to be like one of those revenge games for him, and it's going to be a revenge game for us because, they did have our number. They derailed our season in 2021. That's when we started losing, and not started losing, quote unquote, because we still made the playoffs, but that's when we started being knocked off of being like a top contending team that was gonna be like 1 or 2 in the power rankings, because we just knocked off the Los Angeles Rams earlier that season to take that power ranking away from them. And obviously last year having that beatdown that we had to suffer in Green Bay, that's got to be a very important game that they would have to circle on the calendar to make sure that if they beat them, who they have themselves a pretty good team. They have a pretty good defense there. Of course, Jordan Love has ascended to becoming their their quarterback and whatnot. That's an important like litmus test for the Cardinals coming up this year.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was also like a blessing in disguise last year. What was that, week 4? I think Green Bay last year, like that was what woke them up. That was the embarrassment they needed, and then they went on a run. Like it was crazy. Like it was embarrassing. Josh Jacobs and Jordan Love threw all over. Excuse me. It was Cardinals needed that. I mean, I'm just scared. Like you look at this. I don't know if this is every year. Just there's a good wide receiver on every team, but I feel like every year the Cardinals go up against 2 stud wide receivers every week.
Mm-hmm.
Like this secondary is going to be challenged every week, save, depending on the Saints who their quarterback is. But like, the Bucks, the Colts, Texans, Bengals, Rams.
Bucks just got another first-round wide receiver. Like that's something. At least it's like you said, it makes the Will Johnson pick make a lot of sense in getting a young defensive guy. And we saw with Walter Nolan, like when you looked at the tape and were able to see the disruption on the run game, and then saw the pass game. One of the things I think we talked about pre-draft with me and Marcos, and I had said, I don't know if Nolan's going to be there. Part of the talk had been San Francisco at the time, depending on whatever happened with the 8th overall pick. You figured that if you want offensive tackle, you can at least probably get a guy who can penetrate in round 2. What we've seen instead is the Cardinals have taken a weakness, which saw the likes of, I want to say, Dante Stills and I think the pride of Gilbert Mesquite High School, not their rival, Roy Lopez, were their top guys on the defensive line to adding Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell, and another first-round pick. The interior disruption, I think, is something that, as we've seen when it comes to NFL quarterback play, there's guys on this list who are going to have guys in their face, such as the Falcons game with Michael Penix with those multiple leg injuries, a shorter quarterback in Bryce Young, having a guy in Sam Darnold with the Seahawks who's not known for being a rusher. Those are all areas where I think you can say that this is why this Cardinals team is probably built a little bit different than teams from the past. The other also being, if you take a look at their schedule and then look at last year's playoff team. So take a look at who they played last year. Cardinals played out of the 7 playoff teams that were there last year. Cardinals played 6 of them. They played the Lions. They played the Rams. They played the Vikings. They got blown out by the Commanders. They played the Packers. The only team that they didn't play was the Buccaneers, who they played this year. This year, it's the Rams and it's the Bucks. They don't play the Lions. They don't play the Commanders. They don't play it. Now, we know at least that the way that things are stacking up, they're probably going to have maybe one of those teams could get back into the postseason. This year, you're hoping you could be that playoff contender that other teams are having to play. But I think we're kind of underestimating Arizona a little bit because they played one of the toughest schedules in the league last year and managed to come out of it for the most part with spending some time in first place, having a difficult finish, and we're still able to manage to get out of the season with an 8-9 record. This year, playing some of those teams that are not expected to be great, I think that's a big reason for why you could probably buy on the Cardinals heading into this season versus selling on them, especially now knowing that they've got a veteran quarterback who can win you a game or two should something happen to a Kyler Murray, hopefully in the short term.
And you've got a guy who can do the you've got a perfect guy for the short yardage stuff. Jacoby Brissett would be great for that. Like my question to you is real quick, because I know we're gonna wrap here in a little bit.
Yeah.
Football head question. 4th downs, if the defense is good, are we going to see Detroit Lions numbers on going forward on 4th down this year? Like, I'm not saying 4th and 6 from the 8, but like anything outside your 40 and inside 5 yards, like, do you see this revolutionizing in this organization if the defense is good with the weapons they have on offense? 4th down is going to fascinate me this year.
Yeah, if you have especially let's just say that the defense ascends to like being a top 10 defense and they turn the ball over quite a bit, or they're like just the type of defense that you can trust in a close game situation. I think that the 4th downs are just going to be more prevalent, mostly because of the fact that if you convert on those 4th downs, a lot of times it just turns into points for offense. Right. And depending on where you're at, that's also something that like plays into it. But punting the ball away, it's just basically losing on a 4th down anyway. So if you're in a down distance where you're close to their, let's say we're at their 30-yard line, we're at their 20-yard line, and we don't convert on that. It's just like punting the ball to their deep territory. Now they have to go 80 to 70 yards to be able to get points on the board. If you have the type of defense that, you can trust, oh yeah, absolutely. They're going to go for it more often.
Yeah, I think when you look at how I think Aaron Schatz, who is the one of the football guys at least who did this with the evaluating how coaches' decisions were on fourth down. Jonathan Gannon in his first 2 seasons ranked in like the top 5 or 6 of NFL head coaches in terms of going for it on fourth down when he should have gone for it. I know last year there was that game, I think, against the Rams where they decided that they were going to punt, should have gone for it because the play call previous was there. Part of where I think we'll get to see this season that's going to be very interesting to me is if things go belly up in Indianapolis for whatever reason, because you got Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, and let's know at least for sure, if you're kind of then having to bench your quarterback and trust Daniel Jones to kind of save your franchise, that's Shane Steichen, at least if that's something that's going to be there. There could be some fire under Drew Petzing's behind this year in terms of they're going to have that confidence. We've seen when they can hand the ball off to James Conner and he gets there usually once or twice. We've seen some questionable times when that comes up in some close games. We've also seen a lot of these games have been close because the defense had a penchant for giving up either some big plays, or you'd see last year a couple of times there was just receivers who were able to run rampant on the Cardinals. It got better once they actually brought Max Melton in, were able to rotate things around on the back end with getting some more snaps for Dadrian Taylor-Demerson, being able to move some guys around. The fact they would mix it up so much on the back end, offensive coordinators would talk about and say, yeah, like it's hard to coach against Nick Rallis with this defense because he'll throw something out there and then rotate it on the next snap. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, last time they brought this all man out blitz. This time they backed everyone up, but we're still seeing at least someone being able to get around on the edge, which is having the quarterback then needing to step up into the pocket a little bit. But now you're throwing into 7 guys. So these are some little scenarios that we've seen where I think that the defense taking up a step this year, plus Arizona's effectiveness in running the ball, it's going to be really hard to stop this offense if Marv is able to take that next step into going from an 800, almost 900-yard receiver into being this 1,200-yard type of receiver. That's, I think, the expected step that we're hoping that he's able to take. If that happens, then you're going to be talking about, all right, you now have guys in place who are able to step up in case of other guys. It's going to be difficult to game plan. That's where I think we'll start to see some of that decision-making from Jonathan Gannon, where it could be they say, we're not going to go for it on fourth down because if we punt it back there, we've got enough defensive linemen there against these backup offensive guards that the team is already having to start in week 3 or week 4 that we know we're going to be able to get to the quarterback and we're going to be able to pin them deep. It wouldn't shock me if the Cardinals start looking a little bit more of like what we've seen from the Philadelphia Eagles this season on that defensive side. And a lot of that may start from if you're able to get solid, not even great, but solid seasons out of your first 3 draft picks. The likes of Walter Nolan, if he can be able to penetrate, be a third down disruptor. You can get Will Johnson to actually be a corner who's better than what we saw from Max Melton be his rookie season. If Max Melton could take another step forward, those guys in coverage together, being able to have a ball hawk like Will Johnson as well, that's where I think that we are going to see the Cardinals be able to either have more aggressive in fourth and or say, hey, go ahead, like we'll punt it back to you. You guys aren't going to be able to move on this defense. And with that, to make sure as we're kind of wrapping up, let's talk about your favorite offseason acquisition. So whatever the acquisition is, any acquisition, draft, signing, if you want to talk at least about like Cardinals getting a new, team training center in a couple of years, what would you pick at least for that to be the top acquisition, Alex?
Yeah, that was interesting timing after the report card came out that was in the works. What a surprise.
Oh, yeah.
For me, it's bigger than football. It's Calais. So you could say Josh Sweat, you could say Dalvin, I would get it. Calais Campbell looking at the Arizona Cardinals organization, looking at State Farm Stadium and not wanting to throw up means things are working. Things are different. He's like the benchmark for the best part of the dysfunction of the Arizona Cardinals. He was the guiding light of functionality. And he was here for a long time. And then they decided he wasn't good at football anymore or didn't deserve they weren't going to pay him more than, 3 years, $30 million. He's like, no way, I can get double that somewhere else. And then Saxonville, and then Baltimore, and then Atlanta, and then Miami. It's like he came back here. He had options. He could have gone anywhere he wanted. The fact that he came back means things are really changing here. And I think that that's bigger than any edge rusher you sign. It's kind of like it was a barometer check for the first 2.5 years of Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenford at all. I think that's bigger than any offseason signing that you'd get with numbers between the lines.
I think that was huge, at least being able to. The 93 jerseys back in the stands are going to be full blown, at least, which is going to be awesome to see. Definitely feels like this is the hopeful turning of the Calais maybe closing the door on the time in Arizona, but like you said, just the fact that that is even a possibility, considering where we were at the last time the Cardinals, drafted an Ole Miss tackle who had questionable issues coming out. And I was like, all right, I didn't like that pick at all because I didn't think that Nkemdiche was the best player available at that spot. When Walter Nolan falls to you at that 16th pick and you got Calais now to mentor him, it just feels like it is a different Cardinals team, despite the fact that, we're still seeing people saying the same old Cardinals, picking them for the same, third or fourth place in the division.
Yep, absolutely. Apologies to the people watching the stream. I didn't want to give you guys bad luck, but this little girl wants to get some attention, so sorry about that.
There you go. Well, with all of that, at least for the most part, too, that's a good time for us to be able to wrap up. Alex, thanks again so much for hopping on. Obviously, if you want to go ahead and plug some of your podcasts, I'm sure a lot of the people who are already watching our stream are already following and listening to yours, but just in case, want to make sure that people can see the work that you're doing from really a very unique perspective, because you get to say, hey, here's where I'm sitting, here's the takes that I'm going to give on the Cardinals, and here's where they are. And being able to be unabashed about it is something that is really strong amidst a lot of times where you can see either puff pieces or not really dealing with a lot of the hard stuff that, NFL teams, especially this franchise, has gone through.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah. At Clancy's Corner, at Locked On AZ Cards, and then Monday through Friday, Locked On Cardinals, free wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube.
Fantastic. And then make sure you're following us as well at YouTube at the Redbird Reboot Podcast. I'm Blake. That's Marcos over there. Guys, Cardinals have rebooted their offseason. This is it. Now the real thing is yet to come. We'll be coming back to you guys with a schedule fully revealed later this week for the Arizona Cardinals. We'll break it down for you and then go over what we think are the hot games, what are the not games, and figure out, did they get enough nationally televised games where it's worth our while for the most part of the season. Thanks again for tuning in, everyone, and go Cardinals.